So, picture this. You've just signed an insurance application, you've handed over a check for that first premium, and you breathe this huge sigh of relief thinking, okay, I'm covered. But are you? Really? That little gap of time between applying and actually getting your policy can be a real minefield, and that's exactly what we're going to navigate today.
I mean, think about it for a second. There can be weeks between when you sign that paper and when the final policy shows up in the mail. What happens if something goes wrong during that time? Well, the answer isn't a simple yes or no. It all comes down to the specific piece of paper you get in return for your money.
All right, so the whole journey to getting covered really kicks off right here, paying that first premium when you submit your application. Honestly, it's the best move for everybody. For the agent, it seals the deal. But for you, and this is what's most important, it's the action that starts the clock on getting protected as soon as possible.
Now, this brings us to a key legal idea. It's called consideration. It sounds kind of formal, but it's simple. For any contract to be real, both sides have to bring something to the table. In this case, your consideration is a two-part package deal. First, the completed application with all your info, and second, that first full premium payment. You need both. One without the other just doesn't work.
See, if you send in the application without any money, the insurance world calls that a trial application. You could think of it like you're just testing the waters. The company might look it over, they might even approve it, but that policy will not, I repeat, will not go into effect until you actually pay up. So the bottom line is pretty clear. No premium, no possibility of coverage. Period.
Okay, so you hand over your first payment, and in return, you get a receipt. But listen, don't just shove this in your wallet like it's from a coffee shop. This little piece of paper is actually an incredibly powerful document. It's the thing that defines exactly what your coverage looks like during that critical waiting period.
And it's really important to get the difference here. The premium receipt, that's your temporary proof of a potential deal. It lays out the conditions for if and when you're covered right now. The actual insurance policy, on the other hand, that's the final, formal, ironclad contract that shows up after the company has done its homework. That little receipt is what governs the in-between time.
So what kind of receipt are you going to get? Well, it almost always boils down to one of two kinds. You've got the conditional receipt, and you've got the binding receipt. And trust me, the difference between these two is absolutely massive when it comes to your protection.
Let's start with the one you're most likely to see, especially if you're getting life or health insurance. It's called the conditional receipt, and it offers this amazing promise of coverage, but yeah, it definitely comes with a catch.
So here's the catch. A conditional receipt gives you what's called retroactive coverage. That means your protection could start way back on the date you applied, not weeks later when you were approved. But, and this is the huge but, that coverage only actually exists if the company's underwriters look at your file later and decide you were an insurable risk back on that date. To put it another way, your coverage right now is completely dependent on a future decision about your health in the past. It's like you're covered today, but only on the condition that the company looks back and says, yep, we would have approved them back then. So, how did they figure that out?
Well, this gets us to the whole process of underwriting. To prove you're insurable, you basically have to pass the insurance company's big test. The underwriters, they're kind of like detectives. They gather clues from all over the place to build a full picture of the risk you represent.
And I mean, they look at everything. The answers you put on your application, that's just the starting point. They're going to check MIB records for other insurance applications, they'll pull consumer reports, they might ask for statements from your own doctor, and pretty often they'll require a medical exam or some blood work. All of this data gets fed into their system to see if you meet their guidelines.
Let's make this real with an example. Let's talk about Edwin. On August 2nd, he applies for life insurance. 2 days later, on August 4th, he does his medical exam, pays his premium, and gets a conditional receipt. So his potential coverage starts right then. But then, tragically, on August 10th, he passes away in an accident. The insurance company hasn't even finished looking at his application yet, so what happens now?
This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, his family is going through the worst time of their lives, and now they're stuck in this financial limbo. Based on that little piece of paper, that conditional receipt, does the insurance company have to pay the claim?
And here is the answer. The underwriters have to proceed as if Edwin were still alive. They look at all the information they had in their hands as of August 4th. His application, the results of his medical exam, all of it. If that info shows he was healthy and met their standards, then yes, he was insurable. The application gets approved retroactively and boom, the claim gets paid.
But if his exam results showed a serious uninsurable health problem, they would have had to decline his application. In that case, the claim is denied and his premium is simply returned to his family.
Now, just to get a little deeper into the weeds, there are actually two flavors of these conditional receipts. The insurability type, which we just saw with Edwin, is by far the most common, and it's the one that gives you that valuable retroactive coverage. But you really need to watch out for the approval type, which is much rarer. This one gives you zero retroactive protection. Your coverage only kicks in on the exact day the underwriter puts the approved stamp on your file, which could be weeks away. It's a huge difference, and it's buried in the fine print.
Okay, now let's flip the coin and talk about that other, much rarer type of receipt, the binding receipt. You can think of this as the holy grail of temporary coverage. And why is that? Because it offers immediate, totally unconditional protection from the second you pay. No strings attached.
Let's just put them side by side. A conditional receipt? Coverage starts retroactively, but only if you are insurable. A binding receipt? It starts immediately. The big one? If you die before you're approved, a conditional receipt pays out only if you were insurable. A binding receipt? It pays. Period. Unless they've already sent you a formal rejection letter. You can see why insurers see these as high risk, which is why they're common for things like auto and home insurance, but almost unheard of for life insurance.
And that's really the bottom line right there. With a binding receipt, the insurance company is on the hook for a potentially massive payout for weeks, even if they later find out the person was a huge risk. And, that's a gamble that most life and health insurance companies just are not willing to take.
So let's wrap this all up. Your journey to getting covered really has 5 main steps. 1, you apply and you pay. 2, you get that receipt. 3, and this is the most important thing I want you to take away from this, you read that receipt so you know exactly what's going on. 4, the insurer does their detective work. And finally, 5, your official policy is issued. Everything, and I mean everything, hinges on what happens in step 3.
Look, at the end of the day, this isn't just about some legal jargon. It's about having peace of mind. That receipt you get isn't just proof you paid, it's the temporary contract that could make all the difference in the world for your family. Knowing what it says means knowing exactly where you stand. So the next time you're applying for insurance, are you just going to sign and forget about it, or are you going to ask the one question that matters most? What kind of receipt is this?